A while ago I saw one of these programmes about the 100 best of this and the 100 best of that. You know, the 100 best comedy films, the 100 sexiest heroines, whatever it is. This particular, being a sad person, the one that interested me was the 100 best commercials. And when I watched this show, I was struck by something, and it was that I've been very, very lucky in my career. That I've worked with some amazingly good people. I worked with David Ogilvy for about 8 years, probably the only genius I've ever met or really got to know. And I worked with a man called Joe Sacco back in the 60s, who was an extraordinary Madison Avenue visionary, one of the original Mad Men. I still work with a guy called Chris Jones, who's the only direct marketing art director who is not American to have been elected to a thing called the Irving Wonderman, given the Irving Wonderman Award for Lifetime Achievement. He's the only non-American to get this award. I work with him still. And years ago I worked with a man called John Webster. And his name came to mind because when I saw these 100 best commercials ever made, it emerged that John Webster had made more of these commercials than anyone else. Wonderful commercials for people like John Smith featuring a funny dog and all sorts of things. Very, very funny commercials. But I worked with him for a while, not for very long, and I was struck by something. He was very, very hard work to work with because he was terribly quiet. He was very earnest. And we were sitting together for a couple of weeks, and he would sit there for a day or so and he'd not say anything. And then he'd suddenly say, "What do you think about this? But what do you think about that?" He took it very, very seriously. And eventually, one day he suddenly said to me, after we'd stopped working together, he said to me, but he came into my office and he said, we've done it. I said, "What have you done?" He said, "We've just created the great ad." And I said, "John, what are you talking about? What you're talking about is what goes on the back of what people wrap fish and chips in. It goes between the programmes, yeah?" Which was rather unkind. But then I thought, why was John so good? John was so good because he took it seriously. He acted as though it was the most important thing in the world. And I was reminded of a story about an American who ran a catalogue company, William Sonoma. And apparently one day he went to a photographic shoot and they were shooting a cake. And he put his finger in and dipped it in the cake and tasted the cake and he said, this is terrible. And they said, "But nobody will taste it, nobody will ever know." And he said, "I will. Do it again." And it occurred to me that, you know, if you want to succeed, you really have to be insanely intent on doing it as well as you possibly can, no matter how unimportant it may seem. You've really got to do your best.